Vanatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parivrajak Acharya, Ashotara Sata Shri Srimad. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Parivrajak Acharya, Ashotara Sata Shri Srimad, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Go, Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, reading from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, fourth chapter, titled Vidura Approaches Maitreya, text number 28. Raja Uvacha Nidhanam Upagateshu Vrishni Bhojeshu Adhirata Yuta Pa Yuta Peshu Mukhyaha Saha Tu Katham Avashishtaha Udhavaha Yat Harihi Api Tatyaje Akritim Tri Adhishaha Rajovacha Rajovacha Nidhannamupagateshu Vrishni Bhojesh Nidhannamupagateshu Vrishni Bhojesh Adhirata Yutapa Yutapeshu Mukyaha Adhirata Yutapa Yutapeshu Mukyaha Satu Katam Avishishta Udhavo Yad Satu Katam Avishishta Udhavo Yad Dharirapi Tatyaja Akritim Tradishaha Rajovacha Nidhannam Upagateshu Vrishni Bhojesh Nidhinnam Upagateshu Vrishni Bhojesh Adhirata Yutapa Yutapeshu Mukyaha Adhirata Yutapa Yutapeshu Mukyaha Satu Katam Avishishta Udhavo Yad Satu Katam Avishishta Udhavo Yad Dharirapi Tatyaja Akritim Tradishaha Rajovacha Nidhannam Upagateshu Vrishni Bhojesh Adhirata Yutapa Yutapeshu Mukyaha Satu Katam Avishishta Udhavo Yad Dharirapi Tatyaja Akritim Tradishaha. Please chant. Rajovacha Nidhannam Upagateshu Vrishni Bhojesh Adhirata Yutapa Yutapeshu Mukyaha katam davoyad. Darirapi tatyaja akritim tradishaha. Rajovacha nidhanamupagateshu vrishni bhojesh. Rajovacha nidhanam upagateshu vrishni bhojesh. Adhirata yutapa yutapeshu mukyaha. Satukatam avishishta udhavo yad. Darirapi tatyaja akritim tradishaha. Rajovacha nidhanam upagateshu vrishni bhojesh. Adhirata yutapa yutapeshu mukyaha. Satukatam avishishta udhavo yad. Mataji's? Rajovacha nam upagateshu vrishni bhojesh. Yata yutapa yutapeshu mukyaha. Dukatam avishishta udhavo yad. Darirapi tatyaja akritim tradishaha. Rajovacha nidhanam upagateshu vrishni bhojesh. Adhirata yutapa yutapeshu mukyaha. Satukatam avishishta udhavo yad. Dharirapi tatyaja akritim tradishaha. Rajovacha nidhanam upagateshu vrishni bhojesh. Adhirata yutapa yutapeshu mukyaha. Satukatam avishishta udhavo yad. Darirapi tatyaja akritim tradishaha. Raja uvacha. The king inquired. Nidhanam, destruction. Upagateshu, having overtaken. Vrishni, of the Vrishni dynasty. Bhojeshu, the Bhoja dynasty. Adhirata, great commander. Yuta, Pa, commander-in-chief. Yuta, Peshu, amongst them. Mukyaha, prominent. Saha, he. Tu, only. Katam, how. Avashishdaha, remained. Udhavaha, Udhava, Yat, whereas. Harihi, the personality of Godhead. Api, also. Tatyaje, finished. Akritim, complete pastimes. Tri, Adhishaha, the Lord of the three worlds. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The king inquired, at the end of the pastimes of the Lord of the three worlds, Sri Krishna, and after the disappearance of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties, who were the best of the great commanders, why did Uddhava remain alone, or alone remain? Purport. According to Sri Jiva Goswami, Nidhanam means the transcendental abode of the Lord. Ni means highest, and Dhanam means opulence. And because the abode of the Lord is the highest manifestation of transcendental opulence, his abode can therefore be called Nidhanam. Apart from the grammatical elucidation, the real purpose of the word Nidhanam is to indicate that all members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties were direct associates of the Lord. And after the end of his pastimes, all the associates were dispatched to their respective positions in the transcendental abode. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elucidates the meaning of akritim as pastimes. A means complete, and kritim means the transcendental pastimes. Since the Lord is identical with his transcendental body, there is no question of his changing or quitting his body. To act in accordance with the rules and customs of the material world, the Lord seems to take his birth or leave his body. But the pure devotees of the Lord know well the actual fact. It is necessary, therefore, for the serious students of Srimad Bhagavatam to follow the notes and comments of the great acharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti. To others who are not great devotees of the Lord, the comments and explanations of such acharyas may appear to be grammatical jugglery, but to the students who are in the line of disciplic succession, the explanations of great acharyas are quite fit. The word upagateshu is also significant. All the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja directly reach the abode of the Lord. Other devotees do not reach the abode of the Lord directly, but the pure associates of the Lord have no attraction for the opulence of any planets of the material world. Sometimes, due to inquisitiveness, devotees who are promoted to the abode of the Lord have some attraction for the opulence of the higher material planets above the earth, and thus they desire to see them while going up to the perfection. But the Vrishnis and Bhojas were directly dispatched because they had no attraction for material planets. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also suggests that according to the Amara Kosha dictionary, Akriti also means signal. Lord Krishna ordered Uddhava by signal to go to Badrika ashram after his departure, and Uddhava, as a pure devotee of the Lord, carried out the order more faithfully than going back to Godhead, or the abode of the Lord. That was the cause of his remaining alone, even after the departure of the Lord from the face of the earth. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yataf Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari. Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha. Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Rajavacha Nidanam Upagateshu Vrishni Bhojesh Adhirata Yutapa Yutapeshu Mukyaha. Satu Katam Avashishta Udhavo Yad Darir Api Tatyaja Akritim Tradishaha. The king inquired, at the end of the pastimes of the Lord of the three worlds, Sri Krishna, and after the disappearance of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties, who were the best of the great commanders, why did Uddhava alone remain? We are continuing this fourth chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, titled Vidura Approaches Maitreya, where we're seeing Vidura and Uddhava have different discourses here on the bank of the Yamuna. And here in this verse, we're basically going back to this original conversation here between Srila Shukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit, which is the basis and the original storyline, I guess you could say, of this Srimad Bhagavatam. Throughout the whole Bhagavatam, we see that there are various transcendental discourses between different great personalities, where they describe different pastimes of the Lord, pastimes of the Lord's devotees, different pastimes for instructional purposes. And there are many discourses within this original discourse between Shukadeva Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit. Because Shukadeva Goswami, he's relating all of these instances and all these conversations here to Maharaj Parikshit. And here in this verse, specifically, the king, which refers to Maharaj Parikshit, is inquiring about the nature of Uddhava's remaining on the planet after Krishna's disappearance. Because as he phrases here in his question, that all of these confidential associates and great devotees of the Lord, when Krishna began to wrap up his pastimes here in the Tri Adishaha of these three worlds here, that so many of them, there was this great, I guess you could say Krishna orchestrated his pastimes in such a way where all of these members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties were able to go back home, back to Godhead after his manifest pastimes. As we all know the story, that there was a great battle that ensued, often in Krishna's pastimes. We see that it isn't just some simple or very chill, very calm nature of his pastimes, but it's often very grand and very magnanimous. So here we see too that it wasn't that the members of the Vrishni and the Bhoja dynasties, that they just went to sleep one day and then they left their body in their sleep and they went back home, back to Godhead. But there was this great orchestration, there was this great battle that ensued, where all of these members of the Vrishni and Bhoja dynasties were able to leave the world in this way. And it's described here that all of the members of the Vrishni and Bhoja directly reached the abode of the Lord. So we can see that these are confidential associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These aren't just ordinary conditioned souls like myself, but they're actually eternal associates of the Lord who came down with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to engage in his different pastimes. And as is being described here by Srila Prabhupada in his purport quoting Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it's mainly discussing about the nature of these supreme transcendental pastimes of the personality of Godhead. And this is something that's very important to understand. Pretty much the very first teaching that we have in Bhagavad Gita that Lord Krishna gives us is this differentiation between what is matter and what is spirit. And this is a very important thing to understand, specifically in reference to the Lord's pastimes. Because if one tries to see the Lord's transcendental pastimes through mundane vision or mundane understanding, then they will be very easy to misunderstand. Because the Lord's pastimes, they aren't bound by any material laws. Krishna doesn't have to follow these laws that he himself sets up. Rather, he's transcendental to these different laws and all these different things put in place by him. So it's very important to understand this distinction between what is matter and what is spirit. Because Krishna, he isn't a conditioned soul, he isn't a living entity like you or me. He doesn't have a material body, a material form, or anything like this. As Srila Prabhupada describes here in the purport, quoting Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that since the Lord is identical with his transcendental body, there is no question of his changing or quitting his body. To act in accordance with the rules and customs of the material world, the Lord seems to take birth or leave his body. But the pure devotees of the Lord know well the actual fact. So what is this actual fact? The actual fact is that even though it may appear that the Lord takes birth, that he grows up and he's a young boy, he has a mother, he has a father, he engages in so many different activities, these activities aren't the same as our activities. They're completely transcendental activities because the Lord, his name, his form, his qualities, his pastimes, they're all completely spiritual. And this spiritual nature engages in different spiritual activities. And because of all these different spiritual activities, the Lord must have a completely spiritual form to engage in all these spiritual activities. So it isn't just that by engaging in different activities, it means that the Lord must have a material form, because even though Krishna is described as nirguna, or without qualities and without form, it's the understanding that is brought out by our acharyas is that there is no material form or no material qualities put on to Krishna, but rather all of his form and his name, his qualities, everything about him is completely spiritual, completely transcendental. So this is the actual fact and the understanding that we must have. And people who become sahaja, or who take things very, very cheaply, they say that because the Lord is engaging in different activities, that these must be the same as my activities. Because I engage in so many activities and I have a material form, therefore the Lord must also engage in material activities and also have a material form. And therefore, it makes it very difficult for them to understand the transcendental nature of the Lord's pastimes, because they consider the pastimes and the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be exactly like theirs. And this becomes very difficult because Krishna is described as Lila Purushottama, or Krishna is the supreme enjoyer of so many different wonderful pastimes. And because Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, naturally, as I was describing, he isn't bound by so many different rules. Because as we can see, even within our own life and our own experience, being bound up by rules and being bound up by restrictions restricts our level of enjoyment. If you're only able to eat a certain amount of things on a certain day, if you're only able to do so many activities, like, for example, in the school, you aren't able to speak in class, you aren't able to just talk to your friends whenever you want. So you could say that your enjoyment, it's hindered. Similarly, Krishna, he's the supreme enjoyer, so he doesn't have to be bound up by all these rules that everyone else has to be, right? Because the nature of the Lord's pastimes, if one looks at it from a material point of view, all of the gopis and all the residents of Vrindavan who are engaging in these very high transcendental activities with Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, many of them are very young women. Many of them are married. They have husbands. And for anyone in the material sphere, it's recommended that, any woman, but specifically one who is married, stay under the shelter of her husband and don't go outside of the house. It's described that, in the pastimes of Lord Ram, that even if a woman spends one night away from the house of the husband, they should be completely rejected. Which is why, in this pastime of Lord Ram, Lord Ramachandra sent Sita away to set this great example, because that was the mood and that was the mission of Lord Ramachandra, was to establish this dharma. So when one of his citizens, one of the residents of his kingdom, was like, "Oh, I won't be like Lord Ram and just accept you back after spending the night in the house of another man." And when Lord Ramachandra heard this, because he's trying to establish dharma, he sent Sita away because he had to set the correct example. But Krishna, in his pastimes, because he is Leela Purushottama, and because he's displaying his full opulence as the supreme enjoyer, he doesn't have to be bound by all these different rules. So one has to be able to see these transcendental activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the lens of the fact that these activities are completely spiritual. And we can only do this by gaining entrance into these activities, gaining entrance into these pastimes by the previous acharyas and by the pure devotees of the Lord. As is described here, even in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is quoting so much here by Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And it's described here in the purport, if I can just find it here real quick, that it is necessary, therefore, for the serious students of Srimad Bhagavatam to follow the notes and comments of other great acharyas like Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti. To others who are not devotees of the Lord, the comments and explanations of such acharyas may appear to be grammatical jugglery, but to the students who are in line of disciplic succession, the explanations of great acharyas are quite fit. The other day when I was distributing books at this Georgia State University, I met one Indian boy, and I was speaking to him. I was showing him these books. I was saying, we're giving everybody Bhagavad Gita, and he was telling me, I've read Bhagavad Gita, so-and-so, as they almost all say. But I was describing to him that this is Bhagavad Gita as it is, because it was given to us by Srila Prabhupada, and it's given without any external meaning or anyone's external interpretation, but it simply gives Krishna's message as it is. And what he told me was like, "Oh yeah, I've read through Prabhupada's Gita, and I've read so many other Gitas, and I don't really like Prabhupada's interpretation so much, because he emphasizes too much about this bhakti yoga. Versus, there's so many things talked about in the Bhagavad Gita, and really what Krishna is just trying to say is he's giving you so many different options, and you can pick whichever option you like best." This is what he was describing to me. And, I kind of pressed him further, and I was, but Krishna, describes that at the end of the 6th chapter, he talks about how the greatest yogi is one who completely surrenders everything unto me. And then the next 6 chapters, Krishna says, basically talking about how the greatest form of worship and what pleases him the most is when one completely surrenders everything to Krishna and engages in what is described as pure devotional service. Right? This 12th chapter, it talks completely about devotional service. So this is why we kind of have to see everything through the lens of the previous acharyas, because from a mundane perspective, in this purport here, it's, talking about different Sanskrit words and how they can be broken up grammatically by different kinds of meaning. Like, basically the first sentence of this purport says, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, Nidanam means the transcendental abode of the Lord. But if you go to the word for word here, Srila Prabhupada translates Nidanam as destruction, which the two aren't even seemingly related at all. And, I kind of searched through and I was looking for other uses of this word, Nidanam. And for the most part, Srila Prabhupada translates this in this way here, where it's talking about destruction or to annihilate something or to bring something to an end. But it's described here, and it's given to us by Sri Jiva Goswami, that this actually means the transcendental abode of the Lord. And it's broken down and explained to us that Ni means the highest and the Nam means opulence. So therefore, the highest manifestation of opulence is the Lord's abode. So to someone who's just looking at things from a mundane perspective and who doesn't actually have this understanding given to us by the previous acharyas, they'll simply misunderstand the works of the previous acharyas. They'll misunderstand Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, as so many people do, and they'll say, oh yeah, this is just Prabhupada's interpretation. This is just, Swami Prabhupada's idea of how he interprets Bhagavad Gita. But really, there are so many different interpretations, and everyone has their own idea. But we see that the great devotees of the Lord, it's by their mercy that we're able to understand all of these different things. Simply by our own mental concoction and by our own thinking power, we aren't able to understand all these wonderful things. Like, if you just think about in our own lives, where if we didn't have the books of Srila Prabhupada, we didn't have the Bhaktivedanta purports, we didn't have any knowledge of the disciplic succession, how would it be possible for us to come to this understanding? How would it be possible for us to know and understand very high topics such as what's being described here as the pastimes of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where this is actually the highest thing. Krishna describes that, in all of the Vedas, he is to be known. But if you read through the Vedas, it's not very easy to understand that all these things are describing Krishna. Because Krishna, he hides himself throughout the Vedic literatures, because all this information about Krishna's pastimes, it isn't just for people who take things very cheaply and very whimsically, but it's only for those who are actually serious about serving Krishna and very serious about understanding the nature of Krishna's pastimes. So therefore, in one sense, this process of Krishna consciousness, it's very easy, especially what's been given to us by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where he's given us this holy name, and especially now where we have all these books of Srila Prabhupada, the process is very easy, in which one just has to chant the holy names. These books are being very widely distributed, and for very cheap, as we often tell people at these book distribution events, that you get books in the bookstore, they're like $200, $300. But we're making these books very easily and readily available to anybody who wants to take this up. And anybody can chant this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Srila Prabhupada said that even a child, even a dog can chant this Mahamantra. So this process, in one sense, is very easy, in which anybody can take up to this process. There is no bar to entry, in which anybody that wants to seriously take to this process of Krishna consciousness, they can do it. But at the same time, it requires one to be very serious. It requires tivrena bhakti yogena. That this process of bhakti yoga, it's very easy for one to do, but one has to follow it very seriously. One has to take to the path very, very strictly. Amayama Prabhu was describing in his Bhagavatam class the other day different things about aspects of Vaishnava etiquette and how specific you can get about different interactions with devotees. And you meet so many people who externally might seem like a devotee or might be trying to practice devotional service. And they might say, what is the use of all these rules and all these different things? You just simply have to chant Hare Krishna and, read through the books. What is the point of all these rules? But the point is we have to very seriously take to this process of Krishna consciousness, because even though the process itself is very easy, we have to take to it very, very seriously. And we have to fully commit everything. Because Krishna describes in the Bhagavad Gita, this sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo moksha yisyami ma suchaha. That we have to surrender everything unto Krishna, and then He will be able to bring us back home, back to Godhead. So that means we have to be fully surrendered. We have to have no desire other than the desire to please Krishna, to please the devotees, to please our own spiritual master. And it isn't just that by chance or by some whimsical idea that all these things can happen, but our acharyas, they have very expertly delineated the exact process of devotional service. We have this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which has been given to us very expertly by Srila Prabhupada as the nectar of devotion, where it presents the process of devotional service very expertly, and it gives us the exact way in which we can be a devotee. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, He also came as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the mood of a devotee, by which He was able to show us how we can act and how we can be a devotee and how we can practice this process of devotional service. And He taught this to the 6 Goswamis. We have mainly the works of Srila Rupa Goswami, where we are Rupa Nugas. We are followers of Rupa Goswami. We also have a lot of the works of Srila Jiva Goswami, in which, like I've been saying, they exactly give us this process of devotional service. And as we see here, which is the answer to Maharaj Parikshit's question, it's, why was it that Uddhava remained alone here? Why was it that Uddhava, out of everybody, stayed back? And it's described here, as Srila Prabhupada describes at the end of the purport, that Lord Krishna ordered Uddhava by signal to go to Badrik Ashram after his departure. And Uddhava, as a pure devotee of the Lord, carried out the order more faithfully than going back to Godhead, or the abode of the Lord. That was the cause of his remaining alone, even after the departure of the Lord from the face of the earth. So Uddhava, he actually stayed back because Krishna, he described to him and he instructed him in so many different aspects. And it was up to Uddhava to stay back and describe these teachings that Krishna described to him to others. Because this is the process of disciplic succession. This is this descending process. That we don't try and speculate and think, okay, I realize this, and I know this, and I know this. But rather, this supreme transcendental knowledge, it comes down through the disciplic succession. So Krishna, he instructed this knowledge to Uddhava, and Uddhava remained here to carry out the order of the Lord and to go to Badrik Ashram and to teach this information, to teach this knowledge, as we'll hear about in the coming verses. This is more elaborately described, so I won't go so much into it. But we can see that Krishna, he left Uddhava here with a specific mission, with a specific goal in mind. And this goal was to preach this information, to spread this message, this knowledge that was given to Uddhava directly by Krishna. And we can see it's described here that Uddhava, as a pure devotee of the Lord, carried out the order more faithfully than going back to Godhead, or the abode of the Lord. Right, we see here that, so many great personalities, so many great acharyas like Srila Prabhupada, all the 6 Goswamis, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they aren't of this material world. They are present here in this material world because they have come here to teach us, but they're actually coming directly from the spiritual world. And they've come directly from the spiritual world. They've come directly from the pastimes of Krishna to come here to the material world and to come to spread this message, spread this knowledge, give us entrance into these amazing, wonderful pastimes. And one might ask, if right, it's hard for us to understand that one can be in Vrindavan, one can be in the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can be directly with Krishna, and then one has to come down here to the material world. One has to associate with so many worldly people who don't know anything about Krishna, especially in this Kali Yuga. We see how degraded everything is, especially thinking about, my own self and different activities I was engaged in. People in this Kali Yuga, they're so fallen. But these great acharyas, these great devotees, they're coming directly from the spiritual world. They're coming directly from the association of Krishna. And they're coming down to this material world and they're preaching this message of Krishna consciousness. They're very widely displaying this message all over the world, and they're going amongst so many people, so many unqualified and crazy people. Srila Prabhupada, when he was coming here to the Western countries on the order of his own spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as we read in especially in this first canto, we see described that Srila Prabhupada, he was expecting to preach to the higher class of society and to preach to the well-educated class. But what he found was just hippies and crazy people, right? I forget who it was. I mean, this story has been told so many times, but I think it was Mitravan Prabhu recently talking about how this first person that, well, not the first person, but this person that Srila Prabhupada stayed with and had an apartment with, he took a whole bunch of drugs and he went crazy and he tried to kill Prabhupada. And Prabhupada had to deal with so many crazy people, and even the people that came, in one sense, Prabhupada said that, you were sent here by my spiritual master to help me spread this movement all over the world. But we can see by the actions of the first people coming to Krishna consciousness, a lot of them, they were taking so many drugs, they were engaging in so many different crazy activities, they were doing so many crazy things, and, Srila Prabhupada coming directly from the spiritual world and having to do all these different activities, it's almost unfathomable. And here we can see here too, Uddhava, he's in great separation from Krishna. He's in so much separation, so much anxiety, where Krishna and all of his associates, everyone who is here with him, they all went back with Krishna. They were engaging in pastimes with Krishna here, because when Krishna is engaging in his pastimes here in this material world, it's non-different from the spiritual world. So for them, it wasn't so much as, okay, I'm coming to the material world, now I'm going back to the spiritual world. But it's just almost like, you go somewhere with your friends and you go to another place, and you might go so many places with your friends, but the nature of your relationship with these friends and the activities, they don't really change so much. So for these associates of Krishna, because they were always with Krishna, they were always discussing about Krishna's name, form, qualities, and pastimes, it was like non-different from them being in the spiritual world because they were directly with Krishna. But we can see when Krishna wrapped up his pastimes here, and when he took all of his associates back with him back home, back to Godhead, he left Uddhava here. He departed from this world, and Uddhava remained. And we can see here, as was being described throughout this chapter, Uddhava is feeling great sorrow. He's feeling great separation from Krishna. And we see, we read through some of these songs of great acharyas, especially like Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, this mood that he's displaying and this separation that he's experiencing from being in the spiritual world. Of course, we understand that these great pure devotees, always having Krishna in their heart and always engaging in Krishna's service, they actually aren't in the material world, but they're always in the spiritual world. We can see they still have to go amongst, so many materialistic people, so many people who might not know anything about Krishna. But it's described here that Uddhava, as a pure devotee, carrying out this order that was given to him to go to Badrik Ashram and to preach this Krishna consciousness, and to faithfully follow this order given to him by Krishna, it's more than going back home, back to Godhead. Because by preaching this Krishna consciousness and by spreading this mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world, we're getting the highest mercy of Krishna, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the entire disciplic succession. We're getting so much mercy by simply distributing this knowledge all over the world. And, this mission, it's been given to us by our previous acharyas, that they haven't simply told us to go to Vrindavan and to chant, but they've given us this, our family business, this guru's business of just faithfully following the instructions of the spiritual master and spreading this mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world. And by faithfully engaging in this service to Krishna, by faithfully engaging in this service to our own spiritual master, by here following in the footsteps of Uddhava, it's described here as more than going back home, back to Godhead. Because, it isn't that we shouldn't want to go back home, back to Godhead, and that we shouldn't want to engage in the transcendental pastimes of Krishna and his devotees in Vrindavan. We can see that even more mercy is there, and even more relishable is these wonderful pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in which he was engaged in spreading this Krishna consciousness all over the world. And it was his instruction to, no matter where you go, simply preach this Krishna consciousness in every town and village. So we can really get the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We can really get the mercy of Krishna. We can really get the mercy of our own spiritual master. And we can drown in this ocean of ecstasy and bliss simply by preaching this Krishna consciousness all over the world. And we can see here it's displayed by the example of Uddhava, that, while it may seem like Krishna was departed, and it's described here that Krishna, he left the face of the earth, Krishna, he was always with Uddhava. Because Uddhava was completely, faithfully following the order given to him by Krishna and instructing others and preaching this message of Krishna consciousness, Krishna was always there with him. And he was getting the mercy of Krishna because he was Krishna's pure devotee. And so, simply here we can follow in the footsteps of Uddhava. We can try our best to preach this Krishna consciousness all over the world. And we can, simply dedicate our life to preaching and distributing books. Then our life, it's already perfect. We don't have to wait to go back home, back to Godhead, but simply by preaching this message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, simply by preaching this message given to us by Srila Prabhupada, we can be in the spiritual world. We can be in Sankirtan Samadhi. We can be fully immersed in this ocean of nectar of transcendental bliss that has been made available to us by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by simply engaging in this Sankirtan movement. So, I encourage, especially myself and everyone else, to keep enthusiastically engaging in this Sankirtan movement and follow in the footsteps of Uddhava and faithfully follow this instruction of Krishna, of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and of our own spiritual master, of this instruction of Srila Prabhupada to spread this Krishna consciousness all over the world by this very wonderful process and method that has been given to us by Srila Prabhupada and that we've gained entrance into by the mercy of our own spiritual master, which is distributing these wonderful books so that anybody can take to this very easy and attainable process of Krishna consciousness, because we want everybody to be Krishna conscious. We want everybody to simply take to this devotional service and to be able to relish this full nectar at every step. Right? When we go to this college preaching program, people, they're suffering so much. You speak to all these different people, like Abhimanyu Sutta Prabhu, he was speaking to this one guy, and his whole philosophy was that he wanted to experience as much suffering as he possibly could, because then his philosophy was that would allow him to experience the highest bliss. But we can see actually this makes no sense at all. That the more you suffer, the happier you are. This philosophy, it doesn't make any sense. As we've practically experienced, the more you suffer, the more you suffer. And the more you're bound up in this material world by engaging in this suffering material activity. So we have this sincere desire to want to engage everybody in this full bliss of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. And by this sincere desire to bring everybody to this ocean of nectar, of this transcendental bliss of Sankirtan, we can bring everybody to the spiritual world. We can bring everybody back home, back to Godhead. Right? Srila Prabhupada, he established this house which everybody can live in. Everybody can come and join. Everybody can engage in this full nectar of devotional service. And they can only do that by this process of Sankirtan, because most people, they have no interest in factually understanding what is the goal of life. You meet and you talk to so many people, they're just content with going through the world and going through the motions, and they kind of see their trajectory of life and they see where they want to go. They see everybody else who's following in that same process, everybody who's doing what they want to do. All these other people, they aren't happy. No one who's engaging in this material activity is actually happy. But they just accept, I guess that's just how it is. And they live by the philosophy that ignorance is bliss. And they're just like, I don't see any other options, so I'm just going to keep going as I'm going. I'm just going to keep doing as I'm doing. But by giving them these books of Srila Prabhupada, it completely crushes and destroys their materialistic vision, because the complete understanding, the factual understanding of this material world, and all of the commentaries of the previous acharyas have been given to us by Srila Prabhupada in his Bhaktivedanta purports. So by giving people this Bhagavad Gita, by especially distributing these sets of Srimad Bhagavatam, people will be able to come to the highest realization that this material world is simply suffering, and the highest bliss is to engage in Krishna's service. To get the mercy of Krishna is getting the highest bliss. And nobody will ever know this unless they get the books of Srila Prabhupada. So we can become perfected and we can make everybody else perfect by simply engaging in this Sankirtan mission, this transcendental movement of Srila Prabhupada, we have to do it ourselves and we have to give it to everybody. So I'll end my class here. Sorry, I wasn't so much prepared. I was kind of here and there and everywhere. But if there's any corrections, comments, or questions, I'll take that now, please, if anybody has anything. Amiyama Prabhu.
Actually, it's, that student who told that I want to suffer more and more, you can tell him like, this is our philosophy, to suffer more and more. You can see Gopi, how they suffer. You can see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how he's suffering. Gambhira, he's scratching his face through the wall. Uddhava also suffering so much. This is our philosophy. But people, they want to be happy, but they only suffering. And because of that, they're not satisfied. But devotees, they suffering like anything, and they happy and they satisfied. As you can see, actually, this also is here. And of course, if you will preach them like directly, like if you will be more advanced in devotional service, you will suffer and suffer more because of separation, because you don't have a Krishna. You separate from him, and you suffer more. Like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave us example. He's like as much as like he's like going through all these kinds of sufferings, and he's suffering like ultimately he cannot even stay in body because when having prema stage, of your spiritual advancement, your body is not ready to feel all these kinds of feelings. We can tell maybe like this also.
I'll tell one anecdote of my own spiritual master, where when he first went to Bhaktivedanta Manor, they didn't have any money. They didn't really have so much facility. There was no heating, there was no hot water. Right? It's described that the building, it was so packed, and they didn't have so much room in all these different facilities that they had, that people, they were sleeping on the stairs. They were sleeping on the stairwell. And that the only sense gratification that you would get was when the ghee lamp would come around and you would be able to feel a little warmth. And when you would get a little bit of Mahaprasadam halava, which was maybe that much, my Guru Maharaj describes. But he said, these people, they have no material reason to be happy, and they're engaging in so much austerity, so much tapasya. They're, from a materialistic point of view, they're suffering so much. But this was the impression that was left on my own spiritual master, that these people are still the most happy, ecstatic, and blissful people that I've ever met. So there must be something here. Even though they're suffering so much, they're still the most blissful people in the whole world. So there has to be something here. Versus we look at the suffering of the karmis and the materialistic people. Even though they're engaging in so much tapasya and they're suffering so much, they aren't getting any bliss out of it. They're simply suffering, right? So you can either suffer for Maya or you can suffer for Krishna. The result that you get from suffering when you're in Maya is you just simply waste your human form of life. But by suffering for Krishna, you go back home, back to Godhead. And you engage in the highest bliss of this Krishna conscious movement. So, yeah, we should bring everybody up to that level. Any other questions here? Vamsi Prabhu?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, in the purport, Prabhupada has mentioned, in the purport, Prabhupada has mentioned that sometimes devotees who are promoted to the abode of the Lord have some attraction for the opulence of the higher material planets above the earth, and thus they desire to see them while going up to the perfection. So, is it means even in the case of Jayanand Prabhu, Prabhupada said that if he doesn't, means he will go back to Godhead, or else if he doesn't, he goes to the higher planets and means stay there, and then, so Like, is it for people with material desires he's talking, or like, I don't get the statement actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at before, Prabhupada describes here that the pure associates of the Lord have no attraction for the opulence of any planets of the material world. And then Prabhupada follows it up here by these statements of, sometimes due to inquisitiveness, devotees who are promoted to the abode of the Lord have some attraction for the opulence of the higher material planets of the earth, and thus they desire to see them while going up to perfection. So this is kind of the difference that we see here by pure devotees and just devotees who are yet to attain that stage of perfection. Srila Prabhupada, he even said that most of my disciples will go to the heavenly planets because they still have these material desires. Because, like I was describing earlier in the class, that one has to be completely free from these material desires in order to go back to Godhead. One can't go back to Godhead by having these material desires. The only desire that can be there is the desire to serve Krishna. But as we hear in the Bhagavad Gita, that nehabi kramanasosti pratyavayo navidyate svapamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat, that there is no loss or diminution on this path of devotional service. So one who is a devotee and one who engages in devotional service for some time, they might not gain perfection in one lifetime. But that doesn't mean that their whole lifetime and all this service that they did, it's spoiled, but they will be given the opportunity in another lifetime to take up that service again. So they will be put in an opportunity where they can realize that even though they have all these material desires, that those material desires, they won't make us happy, right? It's described that, Krishna, he'll fulfill our material desires, but he'll fulfill them in a way that we'll never want them again. So he'll give us the opportunity to take up our devotional service again, but he'll also allow us to purify ourselves of these material desires. So this distinction that's being described here is that of the pure devotees who have no attraction for the opulence of this material world and who have no material desire, versus the mixed devotees, or those who are taken up to some level of devotional service but are also engaging in devotional service with material desires. So that's kind of the difference that's being described there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Anything else? Amoghliya, Prabhu?
Just to add to that, not to negate anything you're saying, because that's all good. There's also, Baladi Vidyabhushan in his Bhagavad Gita commentary describes basically three kinds of devotees, and one of them is Sanishta. Sanishta is he describes that it's somebody who, it's a pure devotee, but it's kind of a kind of pure devotee. And he says that they have a desire to see the heavenly planets, like Srila Prabhupada says, on their, I think he says, on their way back.
Yeah, he says while going up to perfection.
Yeah, while going up to perfection, they desire to see the heavenly planets. So he describes that it's out of, they desire to see the heavenly planets out of service to see the Lord's energy, and to I don't know if he says specifically to glorify the Lord's energy, but they have some curiosity to see the extent of the Lord's glories, and so they're pure, and they go back to Godhead. But on the way back to Godhead, they're given a darshan of all of the different heavenly planets.
I see.
So that's there too. But yeah, I think Gopakumar is described as an example of that. He saw all the planets ascending until he went to Goloka. So that's also there.
Anything else over here? Mataji's, any questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, when we suffer, how to understand that we are suffering due to Maya or for Krishna?
Yeah, that's an important distinction to be made. Because we aren't completely pure devotees. You like see, you like I was describing these bhajans and songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and here Uddhava, people that are suffering so much, but they're suffering in separation from Krishna. So we can see that by simply and having this strong desire to just engage in Krishna service, and if our only activities are that of engaging in Krishna service, and that's our only desire, then whether we're happy or we suffer, we aren't disturbed. It doesn't change our engagement in devotional service. Whereas when someone might experience some suffering due to Maya, they might get bewildered and it might falter their execution of devotional service, or it might change their engagement in devotional service. But for a devotee who is completely fixed, whether they suffer, whether they're happy, whether they're here, whether they're there, whether they're doing this service or that service, no matter what, they're completely content, they're completely happy, and they're completely satisfied. So that's what I would say. If anyone has anything to add here. Chandan?
One point is that a devotee never sees his suffering as due to Krishna's fault.
Yeah.
Like the Tatenu Kampam Sikshamana, he always thinks that it is because of my past karma, because of my situation from my past. Even the pure devotee thinks like that. So, and then for us it's factual.
Yeah.
Of course. So the suffering that we experience, this material suffering, it's coming obviously from our past activities, but then we're grateful that we're under Krishna's shelter. So we never see Krishna particularly as the cause of our suffering.
Yeah.
We understand from that verse from Lord Brahma. So, but we always take shelter of him, knowing that he's our shelter, and we pray that even if you give us suffering, that like Kunti, that if you give me if Krishna decides to make me suffer, so let it be. But it's good because I can think of him more intensely.
Right.
So a devotee, you don't have to be a pure devotee to think like that. The pure devotees naturally think like that, but we should cultivate that when we are suffering, within devotional service because of our mental state, it's our past. But Krishna also may put us in those situations, but Krishna is not trying to inflict pain upon us like other living entities do in this world. So it's important to distinguish that. That even if Krishna is putting us in all situations, we see that it's Krishna's hand. That Krishna is putting me through this thing because I have to learn a lesson. Because he's giving that. It's under Krishna's direction, of course. But it's just that important point. We don't see Krishna as the cause of our.
Yeah.
I'm suffering because I came to Krishna consciousness and this and like that and like this and like that. So we can have that mentality a lot of the time also. I've had that mentality. I still probably do have that mentality. But it's important to kind of understand that it's we accept it always as that the suffering is always as from myself, from my past, and the happiness that I'm experiencing is only Krishna. There's nothing else. Not my past karma that I'm experiencing. I only deserve to suffer. That's kind of this point.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Anything else? Amber?
Like Janardana Prabhu yesterday told that about we cannot, if you see something separate from Krishna, it means this material. But actually everything is spiritual. And it's only your consciousness. It means who is suffering? If you are soul cannot suffer because soul is completely spiritual. And if you are body also cannot suffer. It's only chemical elements. But who is the sufferer? The sufferer is because of your misunderstanding and because of your false ego. This means you don't understand that everything belongs to Krishna and everything is under control to Krishna. This is suffering. If you're suffering, it means Maya. That's it. No. You can suffer, but you can suffer only depends of Krishna. That's it. If you suffering only because of Krishna. This is suffering, but this is happiness. This ultimate happiness. This is our goal of life and it's our target to approach this level. But if you're suffering and you're thinking, oh, why I'm suffering, it means you're in the bodily conception of life.
Anything else? No. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.